There's a lot of debate right now on whether output or input is more important for learning Japanese. Well, there's a 100% undeniably correct answer, and it's a lot deeper than whether you should listen more or speak more. But what if I told you that the answer is in the question? If you don't know who I am, I've been living in Japan for the past 10 years. I graduated from language school and Japanese college and worked in Japanese companies using Japanese for business. I have many Japanese friends and run a school group for helping people to learn Japanese. But 100% of everything you need to know to learn Japanese, I'll be teaching here in my videos for free. So let's jump into the conversation. Now, before I answer the question of whether input or output is more important, I think it's important to tell you a story about how I came to find the answer. I remember going out to eat with my friends one night when I first entered language school. It was at a Japanese bar called an izakaya. If you've ever been to Japan, you know the type of place that I'm talking about. You know, it has warm lighting, a wooden interior, usually a menu, only available in Japanese, especially if you go to a good one. Sometimes you sit down on tatami mats or in a hole in the floor, and, you know, it smells amazing inside. Grilled meats or fried meats. You can smell chicken or pork or steak. And you just get to hang back with your Japanese friends and relax after work, but it gets a lot more difficult and less relaxing if you're trying to meet new Japanese friends for the first time. You're constantly analyzing what you're trying to say next. You're fresh out to Japan. You barely know any Japanese, just like I was. But the izakaya that I actually went to was a pretty cool one. It was like a 50s style shop with lots of retro toys and brands and logos and candies and stuff. Very Showa era izakaya. For those of you that like city pop, just think of that atmosphere in a Japanese bar style. So anyways, despite my anxiety, the music, the vibes, and the people have me relaxed enough that I just decided to try to start speaking with them. But I had been constructing sentences in my brain from the very beginning. And what I realized right away was that what I had thought about in my head was absolutely the strangest thing it could have been in that context. I introduced myself as Joshu to moshimasu. It was very broken and very robotic, but more than that, the words that I said, the way that I said it was way more formal than I had intended it to be with the group of college kids that I was with. And basically they just bursted out laughing, and I was totally embarrassed to say the least. But I could see that they were having fun, and it actually got me to let my guard down a bit and start speaking in incorrect Japanese for the rest of the night. It also gave me what I never would have had if I just kept it in my head the whole night. And you may see where I'm going with this, but let's go back to the question. Is output or input more important? Well, I promised you an answer, and I'll just give it to you straight. Output is absolutely the most important thing when the goal is to speak Japanese. As in, you're trying to improve your side of the conversation and the things that come out of your mouth. It would be different if the goal was to listen in Japanese, but this should come as a no-brainer. The point where the question becomes more difficult is in the fact that you cannot output before you input. Think of babies. You know, babies cannot speak the word water before they've heard the word water. It just makes no sense. Someone made that word. Why would a baby just come up with it randomly? What you feed in is what comes out. So that creates a question. Is input more valuable than output then? But it's just, you know, it's a chicken or the egg question, and one that can send you in spirals forever since they just both feed into each other. But I'll introduce another concept that is actually more important than both of these. It turns out that input may actually be the more important of the two, but not the kind of input that you think. This is because when you speak and output words into the real world and out of your head, you actually create a new piece of information. What is that? It's data, feedback, a new piece of input. You automatically get a reaction from both yourself and the people around you, creating new data for you to process. You also create new neural pathways when you verbally make the sounds with your mouth, with your tongue, with your teeth, and your voice. That helps you to process information in a more effective way. And this is what I tried to introduce in my last video. Speak the words you don't know are correct, because what you think are mistakes are actually not mistakes at all. They're data points. Studies have shown that your brain cannot even start to process data unless you have at least 100 data points. And realistically, you need far, far more than this. But just think about that for a second. At least 100 conversations until you can even begin to understand the context enough for why something works or doesn't work. It's like drawing a map. The data points help you to map out where you are, but if you just have one room on a map, you're totally lost. It doesn't help you go anywhere. So what's my point here? You have to get those words out into the world, and you have to start to make data as fast as you can. Then something magical starts to happen. You start to process it automatically. You actually get to stop thinking when you create data because your brain processes it automatic. Once you see something, you just see it and you don't have to think, wait, what color is that? What shape is that? No, you just know it as soon as you see it. Same thing when you hear yourself say something and when you see someone's reaction. You can learn Japanese the lazy way by relying on feedback. And we could call this something like feedback farming. A word of warning though, don't be stupid. The last thing Japanese people want to hear are insensitive foreigners that don't care to try. But just show respect, try, and you'll be fine. That's about it for today. Again, I run a school group to help people with these kinds of things, but feel free to post in the comments and I'll try to get back to you here as quickly as possible. Keep it chill, go get some feedback, go farm some feedback, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.